Hi, I'm Steve Surfos, continuing with the series of videos about Romans. This is quite a big task we have set out before us to go through the book of Romans in 10-minute video segments. We've gone through a lot of introduction to who Paul was and so forth. Got started in Romans chapter 1. Right now we're up to Romans chapter 1:8. And I'll just start reading there. It's a good point. This is just really him addressing the epistle. And it's kind of got the envelope, who sent the letter, who it's sent to. And now as he starts talking to this people, we're still in the section we've set up to about Romans 1:14-15 is still an introduction. It's still very much a letter between Paul and a group of people in Rome. As of 1:15 more or less forward, it's going to become very much a doctrinal statement about Christianity and orderly teaching all the way up down through chapter 15 or so. So right here, he's now starting to talk to them. He's kind of opened up, addressed who the letter's to, and now he starts talking. I'm going to read verse 8 down through a few verses in Romans 1, in reading the NIV version. He says, "First I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith is being reported all over the world. God, whom I serve with my whole heart in preaching the gospel of his Son, is my witness how constantly I remember you in my prayers at all times. And I pray that now at last, by God's will, the way may be open for me to come to you. I long to see you so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to make you strong. That is, that you and I may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that I planned many times to come to you, but have been prevented from doing so until now, in order that I might have a harvest among you, just as I have had among the other Gentiles. I am obligated to both Greeks and non-Greeks, both to the wise and to the foolish. That is why I am so eager to preach the gospel also to you who are at Rome." And actually, that reading down through verse 15, that would be, in my book, probably pretty much the end of the introduction. And then verse 16, he pretty much lets loose and starts explaining, teaching what he is what he knows and God has showed him about Christianity. But here we see him, and he's talking to them, and greetings and so forth, and he desired the grace and peace of Christ on them. But then he says, "First, I thank God through Jesus Christ for all of you." So the first thing he's doing is he's talking about prayer, and in the prayer is a prayer of thanksgiving. And he says, "First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you." Now, let's understand what's going on here. Here's Paul. You might ask him, well, when do you have free time on your hands? We've seen that he works day and night, sometimes with his hands to meet the needs. Sometimes he was teaching every day, for example, in Ephesus. We looked. So where's all this free time coming from? But to him, prayer was important. And so he says, and in the prayer, when I'm talking about free time, you say, well, I need to pray, but I don't have much time to pray. We always want to do the hurry-up prayers, which I guess are better than no prayers. But anyway, he's thanking God for all of you. He's thanking God for Christians in Rome where he has never been. He's thanking God for Christians in Rome, most of whom he has never met. Okay, and why is he thanking God for all of you? I thank God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith is being reported all over the world. So Paul is traveling all around, and it makes his job maybe a little bit easier, or at least fills him with joy and thankfulness, that when he goes to some Gentile city over there, of the Roman Empire, and he starts sharing the faith, they say, oh yeah, I've heard that in Rome there are some people that are following Jesus Christ. So in this time, Jesus Christ has gone from being in the early chapter of John chapter 1, is anything going to come from Nazareth, He's gone from being someone who origins in these little obscure Nazareth or Galilee. At one point they said, can any prophet come out of Galilee? And now he's gone to the capital of the empire, of the Gentile empire, of the Roman Empire. And there's people there that believe in him. And not only they believe in him kind of like, Tuesday nights, we'll go in the basement and have a meeting, but their faith was being reported all over the world. They were believing. We don't know the details of this, but somehow or other, the fact that they were believing, making some noise, people were knowing about it. So it wasn't just a faith under wraps, or kind of a secret faith. So he thanks God, when he talks about Christ. I think just again, the joy of the Lord, they came to know the Lord, that's wonderful. But also, as he goes all these places, I think it was helpful to him to them go and say, oh yeah, I've heard that there's that in Rome. Maybe, they would say, tell me all about it. But anyway, he says, God whom I serve with my whole heart in preaching the gospel of his Son. That is a big phrase. He says, God whom I serve with my whole heart. And I've seen this translated sometimes, in my whole heart, or in my heart. I serve with whether it's in my whole heart or with my whole heart. I think a lot of people get involved in Christian activities, in Christian ministry, and they're out serving God in the church, or serving God in evangelism, or serving God in this project, or this commitment that you've made. But Paul says, you know what? Where I'm serving God first is in my heart. And I think that's important. If we're going to serve God, do we serve God in our heart? I continually ask God, well, God, teach me what I'm supposed to do to love you. Teach me what it means to me in my heart serve you. This is a big challenge here. God whom I serve with my whole heart. So first, let's serve God in our heart. If you're not serving God in your heart and you're preaching, why don't you stop preaching? If you're teaching Sunday school and you're not serving God in your heart, why don't you stop? First, let's serve God in my heart. God, prepare our hearts. And I'm not making broad accusations here. I think most people that are serving God would be moved by their heart. But we have the example of Paul. I'm serving him in my heart. And now I'm serving him with my whole heart, or in my heart, in preaching the gospel of his Son. He's preaching the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. He says, I'm serving my whole heart, preaching the gospel of his Son, is my witness. So all of that was just to say he's my witness, okay? But again, when he talks about God, he can't just say, oh yeah, God. He has to say, God who I serve my whole heart and preaching the gospel of his Son. This is a real commitment thing here. This is something that fills him up, that gets him excited. God who I serve with my whole heart and preaching the gospel of his Son is my witness. Okay, so he says, I'm telling you something that maybe is a little hard to believe, but God is my witness. How constantly I remember you in my prayers at all times. Now we'll definitely see as we go through Romans that Paul was a very intelligent man. I don't know what type of organization he had for his prayer life, if he just knew that, or he had a list or whatever. But he says, God's my witness that I constantly remember you in my prayers at all times. Wow, can we pray like that? Is there things or causes or people that we can say, I constantly remember in my prayers at all times? I know that's something I could work on in my life. But, remember you constantly in my prayers at all times. And so he's saying that, that he gives thanks, and then he says, I remember you in my prayers. Now some other things that he prays, not just giving thanks, and other things he prays, in my prayers at all times, and I pray that now at last, by God's will, the way may be opened up for me to come to you. So he has a very specific prayer when he's giving thanks for the Romans and so forth, the Christians in Rome, and he says, my prayers, I pray that now at last, by God's will, the way may be opened for me to come to you. So this is a very interesting passage here, but he's saying, I just pray that it would be God's will that the way would be open for me to come to you. The interesting thing about this, and I'm trying to see if he has that here or if we have to jump forward. Well, in verse 13, jumping down, he says, I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that I planned many times to come to you, but have been prevented from doing so until now. So let's go back on the light of that to verse 10. Paul had planned a lot of times to go to Rome and had been hindered. So this is interesting, an interesting mix between God's will, man's desires and wills, not evil things. Paul wasn't wanting to go to Rome for evil things, for good things, but how God's directing was, I planned, I tried, but the doors weren't open. They were always closed. I wasn't able to. So now I'm praying that at last, by God's will, the way may be opened for me to come to you. So this is interesting. Sometimes we say, well, what's God's will and what's I want? Well, if good things that you feel God's calling you to do, keep working at them, keep trying, keep praying, and in God's time, the way will be opened up. At least we have that example here in Paul. So we'll continue. It's great sharing with you the book of Romans.